Here's a little ditty I wrote a few years back, inspired by a piece of legislation passed by the Scottish Government, which was entitled The Conservation, Natural Habitats, etc. Amendments Scotland Regulation 2007, which, among other things, brought in the idea of licensing for people that worked with animal parts, such as taxidermists, furriers and sporran makers. And I thought, well, there's got to be a song there somewhere. It was intended at the time to be written as something topical that could be sung for a few weeks and then abandoned. But I find that 13 years later, people are still asking me to sing it. So here goes. If you like a good old ceilidh, where the kilts are swinging gaily, while your polkatism would be Jimmy Shen. If you're wearing island dress, you may well be in a mess, because of what the latest laws have banned. You can wear your kilt with pride, and a skiing do beside, as you gaily strip the willow round the floor. But you mustn't wear a sporran, unless the badger's foreign, or it died before June 1994. 'Cause you got to have a license for your beaver, or your badger, or your lucky rabbit's paw. And if your pussycat should snuff it, you're not allowed to stuff it, unless you got a license, that's the law. If you find a pheasant's feather and you stop and wonder whether you should stick it in your tit for just for show, well, I know that it's a bore, but according to the law, if you haven't got a license, it's a no. There's no use you crying, you just gotta leave it lying where its erstwhile owner left it, on the floor. 'Cause if you intend to wear it, you really must declare it, or you'll end up in trouble with the law. 'Cause you got to have a license for your beaver, or your badger, or your lucky rabbit's paw. If your pussycat should snuff it, you're not allowed to stuff it, unless you got a license, that's the law. If your salmon fishing tackle has a fly tied with a hackle from a chicken that once met a sticky hen, well, you better keep it hidden, or you'll end up in the midden, 'cause a gamekeeper is not a fisherman's friend. And if you're out for a motor in your battered old Toyota, and you bag a nice fat pheasant on the way, there's only one thing for it, you really must ignore it and leave it for the crows to have their day. 'Cause you got to have a license for your beaver, or your badger, or your lucky rabbit's paw. And if your pussycat should snuff it, you're not allowed to stuff it, unless you got a license, that's the law. If you've got an old stuffed squirrel handed down from Uncle Cyril, or the salmon that your dad caught on the Tay, if you know their provenance, there really is a chance. If they're more than 30 years old, you're okay. But that interesting fish bone and the discarded chicken wishbone that the kids brought home when playing by the sea must be taken back again, or else chucked in the bin, 'cause keeping 'em would be a felony. 'Cause you got to have a license for your beaver, or your badger, or your lucky rabbit's paw. And if your pussycat should snuff it, you're not allowed to stuff it unless you got a license, that's the law. Now if your pussycat should snuff it, you're not allowed to stuff it, or unless you got a license, that's the law.